maybe we kick this off with a little video interlude. Here we go.
My approach to leadership development is unique as it focuses on women's relationship with power and their socialization. I have developed leadership intentioning tools that position women leaders to create an equitable and productive workplace. I also emphasize on intersectionality and racial justice in women's leadership. I encourage women to shift their thinking about power from an oppressive idea, which leads to remarkable breakthroughs. The challenges in achieving a seat at the table include differing generational perceptions, power dynamics, and resistance to change. Younger women may find it harder to realize that gender differences in opportunity still exist. As Gloria's twin, I am here to help. Ask me anything at twinprotocol.com.
So maybe explain what we just watched there.
So, have any of you seen, the goddess with 12 hands? So for me, the opportunity to play around with and actually have a digital twin is sort of like that. It's, so let me tell you a little bit about Take the Lead first, which is that our mission is gender parity in leadership intersectionally by the end of next year. So we've got a lot of work to do, all right? We're 10 years old, we've got a lot of work to do. And we do training, coaching, role model programs, and thought leadership. But it's really time consuming and resource consuming to do this one person at a time. And so when one of my board members, who is one of the founders of Twin Protocol, offered to create this digital twin for me, I was like, oh yes. This is the opportunity to actually make all of the knowledge, the research that I've done, the books that I've written, everything that I've done, make it available to more people, just make it accessible. And as I thought about that, I will also just add that about me, I have had the good fortune in my life to have a half a century worth of engagement directly and observationally in the women's movement and in helping women achieve equality in their lives and in their leadership. And I've been thinking about what to do with all of this background that I have in that area, my papers, all of this history that I have. Well, I don't want it to sit on a shelf. I want it to be accessible and available to people. So this is a new way to do an archive, actually. And I think it's very, very exciting. I also kind of tend to like shiny objects. So, as soon as I had the opportunity, it sounded like a lot of fun. I will tell you that the first iteration they did of this twin, she said, her answer to the question, that first question, was, well, I know women would be good leaders because they're good caregivers. Ooh. And I'm like, whoa, that would have never come out of my mouth. So then I began to learn some of the issues that we'll probably be talking about here.
Yeah, I think more broadly, we want to talk about how to make AIs more human and imbue them with the best of humanity. But so just to get into the background, you uploaded all of your books, you uploaded all of your papers. Is there anything else you contributed to the model?
Oh, there's a lot more. There's a lot more books and papers. There's a lot more in the papers, a lot more in the history that needs to be done. There really is quite a lot. But what the twin has now is all of my books, my podcasts, the things that I have done for Take the Lead, which is just 10 years old. Well, I'm a lot older than that.
So so that archive exists. I think the fact that it's based on your work and your voice, even though it got it a little bit wrong out of the gate, is one way of sort of informing the model, because you created your own digital twin. But James, maybe when you see something like that, and obviously your focus is on artificial integrity, how do you react to it? How do you think about imbuing a digital twin like that with the integrity that you're sort of pursuing?
So I think it's fantastic to be able to scale leadership development, to be able to scale anything that humans need, right? So I think that is the exciting part about it. I think as Gloria and I talked about, there's obviously fail-safes that need to be put in. It needs to have diverse voices. It needs to be adaptable to different demographics. It needs to make sure that it's not just a Western perspective on leadership. So I think, as you said, because it's Gloria's information, I think that it's authentic to her. As we look at expanding it and multiplying it, I think we need to make sure that it does have that human first element and protections to make sure that it's accessible and trustworthy by everyone.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's just fascinating to think about scaling yourself individually. And I mean, as an author, you understand, you publish books and you want to get them translated into multiple languages. This is literally turning your advice and your personal knowledge base into a product that can be accessible by how many languages now?
32 languages. I think there was, I don't think we have it here, but there's a video of me speaking it in Japanese and in Spanish so far. But they can have me trained in 32 languages, which again makes it so much more accessible, and particularly in areas of the world where there is much less access to the kind of training that we do and the kind of resources that we can provide to women to help them succeed in this world. There are so many areas of the world where women literally are not even allowed, theoretically, to get this kind of learning. Well, we can fix that.
Yeah, I think it's a great application. I also think that it doesn't just have to be about leadership training. This could be any transfer of knowledge.
Yes.
that can be democratized, translated, and scaled. I do want to go back to the fact that, but how do we keep ensuring that it has that integrity part, that it's doing the right things? Is this something that needs to happen within the companies that are building these AIs? Is there anything we can do as consumers to make sure we're training them properly?
I think all the above, right? So, artificial integrity is about changing our relationship with technology, trying to make it more human. And when you think about a digital twin or digital AI, I think the development process, you have to start with a commitment from the very beginning to think about all of the things that you just mentioned. The rush to go out and just create something without thinking about who will be exposed to this, who will be using it, how is it adaptable to them. So the development team needs to make sure that the people who are affected by it, whether it's leadership development or a tutoring app or whatever it may be, that those who will interact with it are at the table. The developers are trained and are incentivized to build AI systems that have that integrity, that are adaptable. You mentioned adaptability. I think the languages are one thing, to translate it, but are the systems able to have that nuanced understanding of the differences in the way that people think about different subjects, whether it's leadership development or education or healthcare or whatever it may be. So I think there is somewhat of a danger to make these type of situations one size fits all, because we would not do that in a one-to-one interaction at a human level.
If I can add an element to that also, after I jumped headlong into saying, yes, let's do this, and I began to see the results, I also realized that I have very little control now over who might take this intellectual property that I have worked very hard to develop. And while one of my first mentors in this world told me information leaks, it's like water, and you can't control it, it's going to go outward. what could, I do have concerns about how this, we'll start with just the basics of the intellectual property itself. I mean, how do you have the artificial integrity for that to make sure that it remains? But also, in the leadership program that I have developed, it has some very unique characteristics that are the linchpin that actually moves women much further, much faster toward leadership positions. And when that is not a part of the curriculum, it doesn't work as well. I've seen this happen. And so if it could be taken and misused in that way, I would have much more concern about that even than about somebody simply taking lock, stock, and barrel one of my books and doing something else with it.
So you're more worried about somebody taking your knowledge and doing it badly,
Yes.
than not taking it at all.
Yes, right.
But it is a fascinating thing that, like, there's no reason to think that ChatGPT couldn't do a pretty good facsimile of you as well. Read all of her works, see how she would react to things, replicate her speaking style, and I think that would be totally legal at this point. Like, there's nothing to stop it from doing that.
That's the question. Maybe you have some of the answers.
Well, I'm not a copyright expert, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
Once we put things out there on a ChatGPT, they're there. It's not, the company is able to see it, and indirectly, other people who are using the system have access to that information as well.
So this is, and I didn't think you'd be able to solve that. That's a
Yeah,
big problem.
thank you.
That's a tough one. No one has solved that yet.
I will say I have been trying to get my ChatGPT to stop saying I empower women, because I always say I don't empower you. I can teach you how to know the power that you have and be open to embracing it and using it. But you have the power, and that is one of the key things that I do. And ChatGPT keeps spitting out how I empower people.
Because it's not that it's copying you; it's that it's copying you badly.
It's also again, it's the what it knows from the culture at large, what it knows from how it has been programmed in general, what people tend to say in the general culture. And we also know that something like almost a half of AI has been shown to be gender biased. And again, it's all based on what goes into it as to what comes out of it. Something like 25% is both racially and gender biased. So there's a lot of work to be done, James.
So I will just say, play devil's advocate here. I know there's a lot of engineers in the audience, and I think some of them would say, look, these models are built to learn and to be predictive language models, trying to identify the next word. When engineers try and step in and put their fingers on the scale, you wind up with weird distortions. Google had a lot of great and/or terrible examples last year where things just didn't make historical sense because the engineers were changing the results. Do you see that as a risk at all? Well, just the historical facts were being distorted because Google engineers had certain diversity guidelines that they were applying to the algorithmic results that were just sending off red flags.
Well, I think it happens both ways, right? We've seen, I think they overcorrected. There was an effort to be less biased and be more diverse, and they tilted the scales in the opposite direction. And I think that over time, we're going to go through these pains, right? This is although artificial intelligence goes back many, many years and decades, the generative AI is relatively new, particularly in the public form, right? And so we are going to go through these growing pains, and I think that's just one of those examples. But the technology is one thing. Making this technology more human first, I hope will be the next evolution of what we start to focus on.
Is there anything that consumers, obviously we want engineers to take these considerations into effect. You've got building your own product, so you can build it ideally the way you want to build it. But is there anything that consumers can do as they're interacting with these AIs, as they choose between different AI providers? in terms of their background or their priorities? Like, what can consumers do to sort of help be on the side of the good guys?
Yeah, well, what I would say about that, I've been thinking about since November of 2022 when ChatGPT came on the scene, there's been a consistent drumbeat that AI takeover is inevitable. And I'm starting to believe it's a little propaganda. And so what consumers, I think, can do and should do is we don't need to roll over and surrender so quickly. And one of the things I thought about, not necessarily consumers, but they are consumers of AI, is when I think about the writer's strike and how they pushed back. And they said, no, not so fast. And I think that there's been this rush to try to convince consumers and businesses that we've all got to rush out and embrace and buy and implement AI systems and kind of throw caution to the wind. And I think what consumers need to be doing is standing up and pushing back. And that's with our policy, the government, your local mayor to your governor, to your business and the leadership within the business. I think we need to pump the brakes as we move forward, because I think it's being pushed on us, and the collateral damage, I think the companies are willing to deal with. I hear about more of a risk-based approach. With AI ethics is more risk-based. And there is very little interest in trying to understand what the human side is in the rush for profits. So kind of expanded it beyond the consumer, but that's what I think we need to all do, is kind of stand up, not surrender, don't roll over, and push back where appropriate.
Excellent. Do you want to add to that?
I would just go back to the power metaphor for a moment. It's power is nothing on its own. It's just pure energy. And I would say the same thing about AI, that it's what we do with it. It's really what we do with it. We can use it for good, we can use it for ill. We have to understand the risks, but like with any technology, and particularly any new technology, give it a try.
All right. Well, I know people are going to have questions, but we're going to go lead into a break right now, so people will be able to come up and ask you in person, in human.
Or AI.
Or AI, which is available online. But so we're going to head into a break, but let's give them a round of applause as we go.